Yin practice. So make sure that you get your stuff, the stuff that you need. I have some blankets, blocks, bolsters. I have my eye pillow. If you need those things, you can use them. If you don't need them, don't use them, right? Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's inspiring me this morning. We're going to talk about some wisdom of the deities, which means I'm going to talk about Ganesh, a little story about Ganesh. And I think Ganesh is really interesting to look at in the times that we're in. Ganesh is the remover of all obstacles, and Ganesh has a wonderful story behind them. It's a story, and we need to use it as such, and it's a learning device as well. And I'm going to read you a little bedtime story, but don't fall asleep on me because we have a practice to do afterwards. So Hinduism, one of the oldest belief systems in the world, is rich with myths, stories, and symbolism. The stories of the gods and goddesses, while representing the divine, also embody the traits and characteristics of being human as they role play the stories of our lives. The three gods that represent the cycle of life is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the end of the cycle of life, and their consorts. They gave birth to millions of avatars, some of which have found their way into yoga's teachings today. The beauty of myth and symbolism is that there is room for personal interpretation, which gives us a chance to relate the teachings as they apply to our life, our learning, and our practice. The deities invite us to form an intimate relationship with the God of our own understanding, that being Brahman, Lakshmi, Hanuman, or the spirit of them which lives in our hearts. So I always do that preface because it's important for you to understand that these are stories and that we anthropomorphize them so that we can learn from them and that we understand that they're taking on human traits. And so in these times, really, Ganesh is quite an interesting character to start to follow, and not to follow worship. I mean, to follow and learn from the lessons that he tries to teach and understand the protections, quote unquote, that Ganesh brings us as well. Ganesh, it works on the obstacles to our path. And the invocation, the traditional invocation to Ganesh is Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. And you might have heard that in a lot of kirtan, is because they're actually singing to him. He is an avatar, right? He is an offspring of the divine. He is who you are as well. So when we talk about our mind, how this relates to our mind and obstacles, right? So I teach you a lot about, if you've worked with me for a long time, we talk a lot about tension and compression in our practices. Tension and compression. So these are obstacles. These are obstacles, but these obstacles not only happen physically, they also happen in your mind. So tension, when our body can stretch no further due to tightness in a fascial ligament, joint, capsule, muscle, or tendons. Compression, when the body can stretch no further due to the flesh hitting flesh, flesh hitting bone, bone hitting bone, or the body hitting or prop the floor, right? You can't go any further. Compression. Tension, when I could pull two things apart. Tension metaphorically can be seen as a way through, right? We don't always have to see tension as something that's negative. If there's tension, we can see an end or the light at the end of the tunnel. Compression can be interpreted as the obstacle in our path. Tension and compression are necessary sensations if the yin practice is to be effective. Both tension and compression can stop students from going further in a pose. Tension may be worked around over time as the body gains a little greater range of motion. And we talk about that a lot. Compression is a structural and it cannot be changed. However, we may be able to move around the roadblock by adjusting our body, right? Props, whatever. In Hindu mythology, the elephant-headed boy Ganesh is the symbol of these two states, both the obstacle and also the way through the obstacle. Ganesh was said to be born to Parvati by mixing oils from the Ganges while his father Shiva was away in the forest meditating. And while Parvati was bathing, she charged Ganesh to protect her by guarding the entrance to her chamber. And when Shiva returned to see his wife, he was enraged to be refused entry to the palace by a toddler, so he cut off the boy's head. Nice dad. Parvati, on learning of her son's demise, was so stricken with grief that Shiva was forced to make amends. Shiva sent his brother out to the forest to find the first willing animal to offer their head to the child. The brother returned with the head of an elephant, and the elephant-headed child was reborn. Ganesh is the roadblock as he protects his mother, but also the path we must go around to enter the castle. As we practice yoga, we're presented with many obstacles on our path. We may find that we are tired or unwell, stiff or broken, injured or bored, or that the mind just says no. And Patanjali lists the hurdles we must overcome on the way to our goal. And we talk about the kleshas. Anytime we encounter a hurdle, it is like we are being poked by the tusk of Ganesh. We are being prompted by the question, how much do you really want this thing? Each of the obstacles is a test of our determination, our perseverance, and willingness. Sometimes we overcome one hurdle only to be presented with another. Sometimes we invent our own obstacles. Some obstacles are permanent. However, they are shown to us, they can all be seen as a gift, a gentle nudge to find a new way around or through to your goal, like water sweeping around a rock as it flows down a river. What is it that you're trying to accomplish in your yoga practice? In your life? What are the obstacles in your path? Are they real obstacles or ones that you have erected yourself? What is it that you're really standing in the way of you becoming the best version of yourself? When we hit the brick wall of tension or compression in our life, how do we act? Sometimes no amount of pushing or struggling will take us deeper or further. Yoga is not meant to be a battle or another place in your life to force unrealistic expectations of yourself. Being able to do yoga is a gift. Don't worry about how deep others are going. Just look at what you can do and bloom from there. So today's practice is going to be addressing tension and compression and your sensation and your awareness of that, and the realization of what are you doing about it, or are you just letting it be, or are we working around a certain spot, right? Examine compression and tension today. You're going to learn which obstacles you can work through and which ones you may able to go around. This is what I'm trying to say to you today. Today's practice is really simple, but it might not be that simple. It's up to you. Yeah. Today, I want you to think about when you're feeling stuck at any moment, and then what you can do about it. Look, we feel stuck all the time in all aspects in our life. We feel stuck at home. We feel stuck right now in this period in time that we're in. I can't tell you how many people are resisting these moments and trying to be in last year at this time. This is not last year at this time. This is now. And what's different about it is that we have to take care of each other a little bit more. So yogis, today's practice is really embodies Ganesh. And if you could see, anywhere, all studios I have in our homes, Ganesha is present. I have little statues of him. Some of my students give me statues of Ganesha. There's one right above us, right? It is the reminder that we have to really understand when we are doing the obstacles, or when an obstacle is being presented to us, what do we do about it? Are we in the resistance mode and we're not learning from it? Or are we stepping back and becoming the observer and seeing, can I go around it? Do I have to go around it? Can I open it up? Is there a way through? There's always a way through. So yogis, that being said, we are going to start with pranayama, and I'm going to warm you up a little bit dynamically today because this is such a simple practice. It probably will be a little challenging for you. So you have blankets, blocks, bolsters around you, anything, sofa pillows, books, anything that you can use that you might want to use. I'm going to actually sit on a blanket for pranayama today. So my bones are hitting the floor this morning. So take a moment and find your seat. Find a nice, comfortable seat for you. And lift up out of the sits bones, yogis, and start to really feel the sensation of lifting up in the pelvic floor and squeezing the belly towards the midline. The lower part of your rib cage, right at the bottom here, you really want to feel that squeezing towards the midline. And it kind of acts as a girdle as our lower spine lengthens. So there's not a lot of tension that we can't get through here. This is a supporting feeling. This is the universe or the thing is wrapping its arms around you and holding you, this way. And so we're lifted and the shoulders are relaxed. And this is the inner alignment I want you to start to practice, yogis. So find that space. And then just arrive. Notice everything in the room around you. Notice everything with love and gratitude. And then bring your focus to your breath and arrive there. Notice the in-breath and the out-breath. Cultivating the Ujjayi breath, yogis, for the rest of your yin practice. This is a yin practice, yogis. I'm going to ask you to get into a shape that's appropriate for you. I want you to feel sensation. This is an active practice. This is not a falling asleep practice. So you're going to find edges, and then I want you to explore those edges without falling over the cliff. And we will be staying in these poses longer than you are used to staying in them. So that's why I want you to cultivate that Ujjayi breath. Fidgeting is fine, but then stay and experience. If there's any sharp pain, any tingling, anything like that happening, get out of the pose. Bringing your hands to heart center, yogis. and set an intention for yourself, for someone you love, for the world, anything that you want. Yogis, today's theme is thinking about what's stopping you and what's kind of irritating or frustrating in these moments in the practice, and that brings a lot of stuff up in the mind and in our thoughts, and we can really figure out sometimes, maybe not in this exact moment, but we can start to get close to what stops us. What do we resist? And what do we think we can't do? What is our projection that turns into a perception of who we are? Instead of the extension of what we can do, your unlimited possibilities. So that being said, my yogis, we're going to come into a caterpillar. So I've been cross-legged for a little bit, so I want to come out of that. But before we come into the caterpillar, I just do want to dynamically warm up a bit. So I'm just going to shake my legs out a little bit to get the tourniquet away from that seated pose. So if you were also in a seated pose, just move your legs around. I'm going to move my blanket, and I'm going to come onto all fours, and I will face the front of your mat. You know, you might be facing sideways. So come onto all fours, yogis. And so this is really not for load bearing. So I just want you to let the belly drop a teeny bit, and then press your hips towards your heels, and then bend the elbows, and then place the forehead on the ground. So we're going to come into Chakravarkasana, and then stay here as you lead with the sternum and come forward as you're pulling your head through your arms, and then extend the arms up again. So we're going to find that movement. Press back towards your heels and kind of find a little bit of mild flexion as we bend the elbows and place the forehead on the ground. Now we're in flexion. Then we're going to press the head through the hands, right? And then we're going to lift up and extend the elbows, straighten your arms. And then do that again. Go back towards your heels, yogis, and then bend the elbows and place your forehead on the ground. And then pull your head through your hands as your chest drops a little bit, and you straighten your arms and lift your eye gaze. We're going to do that one more time because it was so good. And hips, heels, bending elbows, forehead to ground. And then pressing head through hands, straightening or extending elbows, any way you want to say that, lifting your eye gaze. And then coming back to all fours and taking a moment. Neutralize the spine, yogis, and press away from the ground and just find a nice flexion of the spine, and let your head drop. And just start to notice the feelings in the body. And then just gently, yogis, let the belly drop a little bit, but lift your eye gaze. And then press away from the floor again, rounding the spine. And let the belly drop. Lift your eye gaze. And then finding a nice neutral spine. Letting your hips go to the right, and please look to the left. Coming back towards the midline, let your hips go to the left and you look to the right. Coming back towards the center. Let your left elbow come to the ground and you look to the right. Coming back towards the center, let your right elbow go down to the ground and you look to the left. And then come up towards the midline. Just take a breath here, yogis. Any organic dynamic movement you want to take it before your practice. Good. Beautiful, yogis. Now, if you need a blanket to sit on, do that. I do like to sit on a blanket for forward folding, especially for yin. If you're bony, you might want to do that. And if you have tight hamstrings as well, you might want to start to sit on blankets. So, extending your legs forward, yogis, we're going to explore our first pose. Be very mindful. Just let the legs relax. Yogis, if you need a block, right, for your forehead, use it, or a bolster, use it, but never put the bolster or the blocks on top of your knees. They always want to go in between the legs or on the shins or on the quadriceps. Okay, so caterpillar. We're going to take our hands by our sides. If you have anything going on with your cervical spine or your lower spine, you will not tuck the chin into the chest. But if you do feel healthy in the spine, then tucking the chin into the chest and finding the compression as we roll forward. The knees can bend as much as they need to. You can grab a hold of the elbows underneath your knees. Any amount. I will show you some modifications, but find your pose, yogis. Experiencing or start to feel the sensation of the whole posterior chain of the back of the body. If your neck and lower back are very bothersome for you right now and you do not feel like you can come into full flexion, just hinge at the hip and place your hands by your legs and just let your head relax. So your spine is nice and long. We're just hinging from the hip. Again, if you have the ability to tuck the chin towards the chest and round the spine, you're going to find the compensation that happens between the cervical spine and the lower spine, and we'll find more of the flexion of the spine. That, again, is very personal. You have to figure that out, yogis. So explore what's holding you back and what it is that you can't go through, but we can find a way to modify, as in keeping your spine in a neutral position, looking forward, and maybe just relaxing the neck. This is also the pose, right? So find your way, yogis. We still have more time in this pose. Start to notice the opening in the whole back body and that whole posterior chain. And notice where you feel it, yogis. Trying to find length as well, even though we're finding this compression in the cervical spine, right? This tucking of the chin for most of us, we still want to find some length that happens right in between the skull and the first cervical vertebrae. So there's space. Take a deep breath. Yogis, I want you to try to explore this sensation for 3 more deep breaths. And then, yogis, start to find yourself coming out of the pose, right? So we might feel a little fragile, but your chin is still tucked in towards the chest. Your head will be the last thing to come up if that's where you were. If you were in a nice long spine, you're just going to hinge back up from the hip and let it unfold. And rebound here, yogis, and take a moment. Beautiful. We're going to go into our next pose, which is swan. Yogis, I'm going to face you, but you face the front of your mat or anywhere that you need to. So I'm going to bring my right knee forward and I'm going to extend my left leg behind me. And I'm going to try to bring my right foot towards the left side of the mat. It's not necessary, right? So what I do need you to do is maybe sit on a bolster or blanket on your right hip so that your hips are in line with your shoulders, right? And so I don't know about, that's funny when we say square hips. Our hips aren't square, they're rounded on the top, but we want to bring our hips and our shoulders over each other. So you want to bring that left hip point rolling down, and you want to feel the left kneecap on the ground. So if you feel like your right hip is way off the ground, sit on a blanket or a block underneath that hip. And I want you to press your hands into the ground for a moment. And I want you to feel the right knee going towards the left and lifting up in the chest. So what's stopping you here, yogis? Where do you feel that? I want you to explore your own sensation. We're going to be up for about 5 breaths before we go down. So yogis, take the opportunity to explore. Yogis, if you need to stay upright, do that. But if you could start to find a reclined position, do that. If you need a bolster underneath your chest, get it. Yeah. And just start to walk your hands forward. Keeping in mind that you still want to bring the right knee towards the left knee isometrically, right? We're still feeling that sensation on the outside of the hip. We're also feeling it in the glute on this external rotated side, but we're also feeling it in the hip flexor on the opposite leg. So roll everything in towards the midline, yogis, and take a moment. You're going to take 3 more deep breaths here, yogis. And then gently come up, yogis. Squeezing everything towards the midline. Don't lose that. And then sitting on the right hip, yogis. Gently bringing the left leg forward and just cross it, the ankle of your left leg, just cross it over your right knee for a moment. And then sit up nice and tall and take a breath. Good, yogis. Take your left leg, stack it, and then place your knees on the ground. If you need to move your blanket to the other side, do that. Bring your left knee forward and extend the right leg back, bringing the left foot any amount towards the right side of your mat. Yeah. Just feel the right kneecap on the ground, yogis, and rolling that right hip in so that your hips and shoulders are stacked on top of each other. Isometrically feel the squeezing of left knee to right knee, and just be here. Be here, yogis, and just notice everything that's coming up. This is a hypercharged area for a lot of us yogis, so just breathe and be very compassionate with all the stuff that might be coming up for you. Yogis, if you're going to recline the pose, start your descent now. If not, you could stay right where you are. But remember, we don't want to go away from the midline, yogis. This pose, because it's challenging, will take you away. But you want to stay in the middle of the mix, right? You want to feel what's going on without any pain sensation, but some sort of a rumbling, right? Because we want to feel tension, compression, and we want to be able to notice what's going on, okay? Isometrically bringing right and left knee towards the midline, yogis. And notice that sensation. Yogis, start to come up gently. Your head is the last thing to come up. Squeezing everything in. Don't let anything go away from you. And notice that sensation as we uncoil. Gently sitting on the left hip, yogis, and bringing your right leg forward, crossing your right ankle over your left knee for a moment, and just noticing that little counter there. And take a breath. Yogis, we're going to come onto our shins for a moment. And we're going to grab a bolster or a blanket. If you don't need one, don't use it. I like to use it, especially for yin practice, because I like to stay in it for a longer period of time. And it's less aggressive. But if you don't need it, you don't need it. You could also use blankets behind you. We're going to come into what we call saddle, right? So we're going to open up our feet, and some of us might need to sit on a block here as well. That's perfect. If you want to roll up a blanket and put it underneath your knees, do that. Or underneath your feet, the tops of your feet, do that. But yogis, if you can sit on the ground and find the back of the bolster, I'm going to move up a little bit. Then just lie back on your bolster, yogis. And take a breath. If this is not a possibility for you, yogis, then stay up here if you can. If both knees bent is a problem for you, then maybe release one leg at a time and stay here, right? If both knees or one knee bent poses a problem, just come into Sapta Baddha Konasana, bringing the soles of your feet together and your knees apart. Saddle, yogis, is a very confrontational pose to a lot of us because it hits the hip flexors. It also gets the quads, right? If we're talking about muscles, the muscle there is being, elongated. And we don't, usually stretch the quad in a yoga class. We're also feeling the outsides of the legs, right? We're feeling also a nice stretch in the belly. This expansion from the top, the bottom of the rib cage, all the way down to the groin, stomach, spleen meridian. If you want to grab a hold of the pointy parts of your elbows over your head, do that, yogis. Noticing sensation, yogis. Is there a lot of compression in the lower back? Or do you feel a lot of this pulling sensation in the front body? Do you feel it in your armpits and you feel compression in the elbows? Where are you feeling it? Explore this pose, yogis. Please take 3 more breaths here. If your arms are in the bind, yogis, please gently start to release them and notice the fragility of that as well. And just lower your arms first and just be here for a breath. If you need to roll to the side to get out of the pose, do that. If not, just press your elbows into the ground and then place your hands on the floor and lift your body up gently, yogis. So you're going to take your right foot on the ground and then take your left foot on the ground and take a moment and just do some windshield wipers. Good, yogis. I'm going to come into a dragonfly. So we have about 2 more poses left to this quite simple sequence. We're going to open up the legs to either side of us. And I'm going to put a bolster on in between my legs to also symbolize the fact that we can find ways out of our obstacles, right? And so props are ways out of obstacles, out of you feeling that you can't move, feeling that it's not accessible to you. So the bolster can be in the center, right? It could be on its back. It could be on its side. It could also be on one of the ends. Anywhere you need to have that bolster, I want you to use it. Now, if you don't have a bolster, use a pillow, a sofa pillow, anything you got. Yeah? And you could use a bunch of blankets as well. Good, yogis. So again, relaxing the legs, yogis, there's no tension, right? The contraction is not making tension for you. There's no contraction. I just want you to relax that. And then if you can, again, tuck the chin in towards the chest and then find the bolster. Again, if you're not tucking the chin into the chest, just place your hands on the sides of the bolsters and let your belly touch the bolster as you reach forward, hinging from the hip. And then we stay here, yeah? But if you can continue, yogis, start to tuck the chin in towards the chest, finding your bolster. surrender to these moments, yogis, and notice. Be the witness, the observer of the obstacle or the path. Take a couple more breaths here, yogis. And then gently come up, yogis. Your head is the last thing to come up. And just rebound. I'm going to move my bolster to the side. Actually, off to the side here. And I'm going to bring my legs towards the midline again. Do it gently, right? You're going to be a little fragile there. So we're going to come into the last pose before Shavasana. So yogis, lie back down on your mat. And just take a moment here and just feel the length of the body in its natural state without you doing anything to it. And then reaching your arms overhead. Walking your arms to the right. And then walking your legs to the right. Any amount, making sure that your right shoulder does not come up off of the ground. Sorry, your left shoulder or your left hip. If you want to cross your legs at the ankles, do that. And notice, yogis, notice the whole side body, that side chain, right? Feeling the expansion here. Then gently, yogis, release the bind of the legs if they're in a bind. And then walk your arms back towards over your head in a long position and legs back to the neutral position. And bend your elbows slightly and take a breath here. So reset. And stretching your arms over your head again, extending your legs to the end of your mat and walk your arms to the left, right? And then walk your legs to the left, any amount. And start to feel that beautiful stretch or expansion on the right side of the body. If you want to cross legs, do that. Don't let your right hip or your right shoulder come up off of the ground. And just find this banana shape or this half moon shape or crescent shape, whatever shape you like to call it. Just notice, yogis, that total opening, right? There's ways through the tension. Take 2 more breaths here, yogis. And gently let your arms come back over your head, bending your elbows. Release the bind and let your legs come back towards the center. And just take a moment here, yogis, and notice this. Notice this rebound. Then gently let your arms come down by your side and notice that as well. Move your head gently from right to left, yogis, and breathe. If you need a bolster underneath your knees or blankets underneath your knees for your Shavasana, then do that. If you want to roll a mat underneath your neck, do that too, yogis. Do what you need to do, but find your Shavasana. Realizing, yogis, that you clear the pathway or you create more obstacles or you resist. Ganesh is just trying to remind us that we do have the power to go through obstacles and to find the path of the least resistance, maybe, or maybe not, or maybe going through resistance and working through that for the greater good. Yogis, we all find these obstacles in our life, and especially now, a lot of you are feeling stuck. And so Ganesha is a great avatar to start to study a little in these times. Remind yourself of your intentions, yogis, and find your peace. Yoga is the pathway to the thing. Yoga is not the thing, but it's a beautiful tool, accessible to everyone. Yogis, if you want to stay in Shavasana, stay in it for as long as you need to, but be mindful when you come up. If you need to wake up with me, yogis, start to wiggle your fingers and your toes. And start to bring knees in towards chest. Roll your knees from side to side if you like that. And then find a seat. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. May the wisdom of Ganesh and understanding the removing of our obstacles are so within our reach when we understand them. Yoga is a path to help you get to the thing. Yoga is not the thing. In this day and age, be very mindful. Yogis, stay safe and don't think just because you do yoga that, all's good. It's not magic. You are the magic. And you need to follow the path to the thing. Get your mind right. May you and your family and those that you love be always protected with the truth of the Absolute. Sat Nam and Namaste.